Welcome to the Perfect 100, the podcast for BNI members who want to maximize their membership, deepen their impact, and grow their business through intentional networking. I'm your host, Tammy Zurak, a CliftonStrengths coach, longtime BNI leader, and one of the few members worldwide to maintain a perfect Power of One score. Each week, we'll explore the habits, mindsets, and everyday strategies of BNI members who are turning their membership into momentum. Hello and welcome back to the Perfect 100. I'm Tammy Zurak and I hold the business coach and training seat in the East Memphis chapter. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick reminder that I'm a member too. So if you come across a business owner, team, or even a chapter that could have some support building their strengths, their brand, or just their results with, all things business, that would be a great referral for me. And if you, as we get going through the podcast, if you hear some things that you think, gosh, that would be, something that I know a business owner that would make sense for, that would be something I'd be happy to have you share. And also I am working towards 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're listening to this somewhere else, I would love for you to go to YouTube and become a subscriber. And if you don't care if you listen to it on whichever podcast medium you like to listen to versus YouTube would be great because that helps me. So please do subscribe to the channel and watch it there if you don't mind doing that. I appreciate it. All right, so now I'm going to jump right in. I'm pleased to introduce Matt Carter with HopeWorks as my guest today. Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm well, Tammy. How are you this morning?
I am doing wonderfully. Thank you very much. So tell us, how long have you been a BNI member? What chapter are you in? What seat do you hold?
So I am in BNI Bartlett, and I've been in the chapter for 2 years, just renewed for year 3, and hold the nonprofit seat in the chapter.
Okay, great. Tell us a little bit more. Well, actually, I'll have you give your 45 seconds where you can tell us a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and put this timer up so you can see it. So, and I know you guys, Matt is in a chapter that I am the coach for, and you heard last week Nick was on, they're in the same chapter and they only do 25 seconds. So you're going to get a luxury of an extra 20 seconds. So feel free to use it. But
Awesome.
when it stops, you stop when it stops. All right. All right.
Respect
ready to go?
the bell.
Okay, ready?
Yes. Hi, friends. I'm Matt Carter with HopeWorks. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator, and we hold the nonprofit seat. At HopeWorks, we work with people who are chronically unemployed or underemployed. We help them identify their barriers to employment, whether it's education, lack of education, maybe they're an immigrant and don't speak English, maybe they've been incarcerated and have a rough background, maybe they just have come out of poverty and don't know how work works. We help them identify their barriers to work, overcome those barriers, and then we work to match them with an employer who will give them a chance to build a better life. When we all work, the community's better. I'm Matt Carter. Ask me how hope works.
Awesome.
All right. I gave you back 3 seconds.
Thank you very much. All right. So tell me more. So because it's a unique, where you're at is a little bit more unique than I'm a plumber, I'm a whatever. Give me the journey. How did you get to this, and tell me more about why Hope works for you?
Sure. Well, to give you the long version in a shorter format, I spent many years in church ministry. I worked primarily in campus ministry with churches in university towns, working with students, reaching out to students, helping mentor students into leaders. And so I spent a long time doing that. And through that, I ended up church planting in a university town right in 2007, which, if you know your chronology, that's right before 2008, which is right before 2009, 10, and 11. And
Right.
so as a fundraising missionary, that was a really tough time as churches were struggling to fund their own ministries. I was not on their top, appropriately so, was not on their top priority in terms of supporting our work.
And you said, I have a question. You said church planting, for those that might not know what that means. Can you
Of course.
more?
Of course. So we moved to a different town to try to establish a church, to to specifically address the issues of that community, to bring the Jesus perspective into the community, and to reach people who weren't being reached by existing churches. There's some statistics that show that new churches are best at reaching new people, and old churches, not new people, but newer to the faith,
Gotcha.
and older churches are better at reaching more established Christians. And so that was our goal there.
Gotcha. Okay. So and I did in my research, I found that you did some other things too. So give me the little bit more of the journey, because I think it's interesting when we get to your Clifton strengths. There's some your results. We'll share when we get there, but you have some interesting results that I think might be interesting to know your journey, so that we can talk a little bit more about that when we get there.
Absolutely. So I tried all different kinds of ways to support my family as a fundraising missionary who has no funds being raised. And so I did a little bit of everything. They talk about one of the church planting roles as barista. So I did that. Uh, I sold cell phones. I got an insurance license. I was a very bad insurance agent. And as I was really wrestling with these things, I had a friend say, "Hey, have you talked to Everett Hufford recently?" Everett Hufford was the dean of the seminary where I had done my master's degree. And this was on a Friday. I said, "No, I'll call him on Monday." My friend said, "Everett really helped me when I was searching for work." So I was going to call him Monday. On Sunday, Everett called me and said, "Hey, we've got a job at the school. We'd like you to apply for it." And I might not be the brightest bulb in the circuit, but when all these other doors are closed and one opens, it didn't take a genius to say, maybe I should do this.
Right.
And so that's what brought me to Memphis in 2011. And I was the director of admissions for the seminary, which was an entire new learning journey. But the networking that I had done as a church planter, I was involved in a Chamber of Commerce networking group as a church minister. So the networking I'd done there as a church, partnering with other nonprofits, referring back and forth. A lot of the skills that I had learned there worked in recruiting students for seminary. And so I was there for a little over 10 years, 10 and a half years. And during that time, we had the exciting journey from almost all the classes are on campus to all the classes are online and everywhere in between. So definitely having to be creative about who can I recruit now? It's different. How can I recruit? Those kinds of things. And the higher education world is changing, and I could see some things going on, and I looked around for a new opportunity, and I wasn't really seeing a whole lot. And when the opportunity came up at HopeWorks, my wife and I had been supporters and donors. My wife actually worked at HopeWorks for a few years, and the community engagement, it was a new position that sounded like it was custom made for me.
Right.
My job was to get out in the community, connect with people, find resources, referral partners, employers, donors, volunteers, students.
A little
And
bit of
so
everything.
a little bit of everything. And so that's where I am. And I hadn't been doing that for very long when somebody said, "Hey, have you ever been to BNI?" And
I
I
was going to
said,
ask you
"Yes." I
that.
said yes because I had subbed when I was a church planting missionary. I had subbed for friends in the Chamber of Commerce group that I was in, and my friend said, "This chapter I feel like would be really good because we have people in a lot of the trades who are looking to hire people." And so it was just a good fit.
Right. I was curious how that one, how your BNI journey, I guess, to get there. Um, so you've been in BNI for how long?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. And tell me a little bit about, in general, how that's worked for you. What's been successful? What maybe not so much?
Sure. So um, a lot of what I do is finding referral sources, working back and forth. As community engagement coordinator, I know a little bit about everything. I don't know a lot about anything, and we'll talk about that with my strengths.
Yes, we will.
um, so part of there are a couple of things about BNI that really connect with me. One is that At HopeWorks, we talk a lot about building a better Memphis through hope and a job. And the people that I interact with at BNI are people who want to build a better Memphis. They're people who are working hard for success in their own business, but they also are concerned about the community. BNI is not a selfish. If you're selfish, BNI will not work for you. It is a giver's gain. I mean, that's pretty core to who BNI is, and so connecting with people who are working to build a better Memphis has been great in terms of connecting me. And I totally, boy, I totally did not give you my best 45 seconds there because normally I talk about looking for employers. If you hear somebody that's hiring, starting a new location, those kinds of things. Those are the kind of people I'm asking to be connected with. And sometimes it may be a specific company. Um, we're looking to we have somebody that we think would be a good fit for this company. Can anybody connect me to the hiring office? And so working with people who are in and around the business community, they know people who are hiring. In our chapter, somebody knows everybody. I mean, we got a lot of people who have been in Memphis for a long time, all their lives. And so it's been great in terms of connecting with employers, but also everybody's involved with different nonprofits. Everybody's involved in charitable work. And there are often times when what we do connects with what somebody else does. And it's very important for us to work together. We can't do everything for our students and clients. Other people can't do everything for their students and clients. And so when we can work together to get the need met rather than trying to do it all ourselves, that's a benefit.
Yeah, that's the benefit of the BNI community, right? Is we have that
Yes.
ability to do that. Oh shoot, I was going to ask you something. Now I forgot what it was. It'll come back to me.
Okay.
So let's have a look at your power of one. So your score for the last through June. This is June of 2025 because we never know when people. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. I'll come back to that. Is I was just going to ask you because it's a this anybody in the world can be listening to this. So does HopeWorks work outside of? It sounds primarily like you're going to need to serve people in the community, but is there opportunity if somebody's listening to this that touches their heart for them to work with you that's outside the area?
Most of our work is actually in Shelby County, and some of that is grant mandated that this is where we do our work. Uh, but I am always happy to talk with somebody and see if there are ways to work. I'm a networker. I'm always happy to talk to people and see if there are ways we can work together. For example, I know that there are a couple of other programs in different places that have started based on what we do that we've been able to partner with. And in fact, about this time last year, a young man in another state called and he was trying to get something started, and so I was able to coach him up a little bit on it.
Okay,
Yeah,
and go ahead. You want to
I was
finish?
just whatever little bit I have to offer, I was happy to offer to him.
Okay, and this bring I just had a thought occur to me that we had a nonprofit on the podcast before, but I didn't bring it up. And you guys work with kids as part of your. You don't work with kids, okay?
No,
Then
we work with adults.
you work with adults only, okay?
Can I give
Uh,
you our four main targets real quick?
yes,
So that may help. We're
yes,
the state's primary teacher and tester for high school equivalency for Shelby County. It's a state grant. I think it's federal money, but it's a state grant. So that's with adults who, what used to be the GED, adults who don't have a high school diploma.
okay,
We teach English to immigrants, again, only adults. And then we work with people who have been incarcerated with holistic reentry. If you've been incarcerated, finding a job is hard, finding a place to live is hard.
can
And
imagine.
so we work to try to help folks like that. And then people who usually generational poverty, but not always, people who just have never been in the work world and they don't know how work works. So, I mean, we're teaching as basic as you have to show up every day. And if you didn't grow up seeing somebody go to work every day, you don't know. How would you
Right,
know?
right, yeah,
And
you don't have
so
a role model.
right, right. Starting, I mean, from that basic to what we call soft job skills. But again, only with adults.
Okay. Well, and you said the word grant, which triggered the thing in my head.
Hmm.
And this is how BNI works, right? Is there's the what do they call it? The Oh gosh, I can't think. I didn't sleep well last night because we had storms here, and my dog woke me up in the middle of the night. So I can't think of the name of the term for it. It'll come to me later probably. But when we say trigger words, they make things happen in your head.
Hmm.
And you said
Hmm.
grant, and I just want to remind, if you're a BNI member, Ivan Meisner has a foundation that does work with kids, and they offer a grant. So if you have a nonprofit that services children, helps children, you can apply for that grant, and you can just do a Google search and you'll find it. Or I'll drop the information in a link below the wherever you're listening to this at, so you can find it later. Or you can go to BNI, the Perfect 100 podcast website, and it will be underneath this video when it's uploaded with that information. So just a side note, because I know a lot of people don't know about that. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to make that known if you work with kids and you're in a nonprofit. All right, so let's go back to where we were, the power of one. So you have a 75, you're in the green.
I'm in the green.
Yes, he celebrates. So your attendance points are 20. Your referrals per week, you're at 10, which is in the red. Visitors per week, you're at 5 points, which is in the gray. One-to-ones, you're at 20, which is in the green. And CEUs per week, you're at 20, which is in the green. So what do you struggle? And I think I asked that question, but now that we have the report, what do you struggle with most?
Obviously, showing up and doing my homework is not a struggle with the
Right.
CEUs and attendance.
Right.
Um, I feel like I've done better with referrals. Um, maybe this is end of June, or is this end of?
It's through June. It's 6 months through June.
Okay. I thought I was doing better with that, but that is a challenge. Um, is I challenge with the referrals. I feel like I invite a lot of visitors, but actually getting them to come is a challenge as well. I've sponsored a couple of members, a couple of people who became members, um, and and like I said, I do uh, try to work with people, but obviously making referrals is clearly is my challenge there.
Okay. All right, so let's look at your PALMS report and then we'll talk more about that. So your PALMS report, which goes from it's 6 months, so there's 20, it looks like 28 meetings total on the report. So you've had 0 absences, which is great. That means, and you've had some subs, which that's if as long as you have a sub, you're not absent. Referrals given inside is 7. Referrals given outside is 12. Referrals received inside is 3, referrals received outside is 5. So let's stop there for a second. So the referrals given outside, are you working with people? Do you have a team sort of? Are you have some alliances in other chapters that you're working with?
No, I should do that.
Okay.
We I do try to attend some of the area wide events, and make those connections. And I do have people in our chapter who will say, "Hey, this person, can you help this person?" And so I do have some of that going on.
And is it because you're serving those 4 groups that you mentioned, is your aim? Most nonprofits, well, that's not true. A lot of the nonprofits are seeking funds, right? They're looking to build funding so they can support more things. That's their primary, but they also have kind of, what does the charity, it's the nonprofit do as a charity, or whatever they might be doing. So what's more important to you, or is it equally as important to have funding versus serving the community in those different aspects? Tell me more.
In BNI am looking for people to hire our students and clients.
Okay.
I'm looking for employers. Um, I do switch my 25 seconds up every now and then. So we do have some major fundraising events each year, and BNI has been great about that. Last fall, we did we sponsored the Wizard of Oz at a local theater, community theater here. The play slash musical, not the movie. And we did a silent auction, and the BNI community really stepped up with silent auction items. Um, in fact, I think our largest bidder was a BNI spouse. So I don't know if the BNI person knew how much their spouse was giving us, but we appreciated it very much. So we do have those fundraising things. B and I bought a table at our recent fundraising breakfast. So there is that is an aspect of it, but week to week, I'm really looking for employers. Um, Sometimes I'm looking for students, and so I'll ask about connections to an immigrant community because trust is huge in connecting with our ESL students. Um, and so there are different things, but for the most part, I'm looking for employers.
Okay. So
And
that oh, go ahead.
recently, I was in a meeting, and our staff was talking about some of our people need day workers, which I'd always been told, yeah, we're not really looking for day hire. But I was able to go to BNI and add that into my pitch, and actually got a couple of leads there. They don't necessarily count as referrals because it's not a business that we're going to make money off of it or anything like that. So it's hard to put a dollar value um, on those connections, on those referrals. But they to me they are referrals.
Sure.
It's what I'm there for.
Well,
Um,
I worked as a recruiter for 5 years in my past, and we charged the company based on the salary. So perhaps that's if you're trying to translate that into BNI dollars, so to speak. Thank you for closed business. If you're getting someone hired, I think that would be, if someone has a need and you're filling it, then I think that certainly could be a referral. And then the dollars attached to, an annual salary might be the thank you for closed business. So I think that's a way to address both of those things that certainly sound relevant to me. So the referrals given outside is that, and I've mentioned this in the previous episodes, but maybe this is somebody's first time listening, is the buttons in when you record the referrals on your phone in the app, there's an inside and an outside. And I think people don't know to push one or the other. Referrals given inside or outside or received, that we want to make sure we record it the right way because, and I know when we get to your strengths, you'll understand kind of the why behind this, but we want to make sure we're tracking things accurately, especially because it isn't your business. You have probably an accountability up the chain, so to speak, in some regard for your time spent in this thing needs to have value, right? So that value can be translated by this is what's happening, and as long as it's accurately represented. Now what your things are, but the paper speaks to, or the what's on the screen, the report speaks to that a little bit better because it's tangible, right? And that's what we have a lot of people who I think we have a good mix of people who have their own business, but we also have people that work for someone else. And this becomes sort of that justification of is it worth the person's time? Now, that's a very wide gap because is it worth your time is relative to how much you're doing,
mhm, mhm,
right? If we've definitely had people that as employees have come in and not done much and not done a great job and their return is low, and I've had those conversations with their employers that, and oftentimes their employers in another chapter and they see the value because they're getting something in their own chapter, but they put their employee in and they don't get as much. And that's whose fault is that? And that's, it depends. But the report doesn't lie, right? Is it tracks the
right,
information it only lies if you don't put the information in.
right,
And
right.
that's not lying either because it's just a result of you not doing what we ask to help you. So if you look at, okay, so referrals received, it sounds like and that's not a high number, right? So referrals received is 8 in 6 months. And, or maybe it is because when we talked to Nick in the last episode, he said, one referral for me is, I think he said 40 some $1,000. So he's happy with that, right? But for you is 7 or what is it? I guess it's 8 enough, or how could we get more for you? Join the Art Academy in Memphis. Master the skills needed to create stunning, realistic oil paintings. With expert instruction, you'll refine your craft. Enroll today at artacademyofmemphis.com.
let me pull up my spreadsheet where I actually track these things for our
Okay.
executive director
Okay.
because you're right. This is a big deal.
And I'll read the rest of the report while you're doing that. So
Okay.
you've had two visitors, you've had 55 one-to-ones, and again, that's in 28 weeks. Your thank you for closed business that you've given is 11,494, and your CEUs are 63. So, and we'll talk more about that when we get to your strengths.
Glancing through here, this in the past 6 months, I've been connected with 15 requests for an employee. Obviously, not all of those end
Work
up
out.
with a
Right.
hire,
Right.
um, but I mean, to me that's good. That's
Right.
2 or 3 a month,
Okay.
and so I am using that information to share with my executive director to say why BNI is worth it. Um, and I know you just read the dollar amount off. I didn't quite. Uh,
You were looking while I was talking. Yeah, 11,494 is what you've given, not what you've received. But
okay.
yes,
Well, I've received. Let me again scroll through my phone here. Um, okay, I can't do the math on this while we're talking. Uh, but I know I've probably received. Well, um, I can look on the app.
you can, because we have an app that tells you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so if you don't know that while Matt's looking, you can go on your app. So we don't share in this conversation. I just had this conversation with somebody last week who uh, we were talking about thank you for closed business, and there we were talking in the power of one
Hmm.
because this is the perfect 100. We were having this conversation, and his comment was, I don't know why. I've always contended that the thank you for closed business should be reported because it's the biggest thing. And my response to that then and always is yes, but because Nick last week is a general contractor, one referrals $44,000. So that sounds like if his thank you for closed business is $88,000, then he got two referrals. Maybe he's happy with that. But if I got two referrals and my average deal, let's just say it's
Hmm.
4,000, I might still be happy with that, but I might need more. And I'll use
Hmm.
the example I used in that episode was if you sell lipstick, two referrals is not enough. Right? So it's all relative, and that's why we don't count it because it can't be apples to apples, and
Hmm.
everything else is. And your value, what you're getting and receiving, if you receive $100,000, but you give $4,000,
Hmm.
that may or may not be good. It's hard to say. So
Hmm.
it's very relative. And the only way to know that measurement works is to talk to the person. So
Right.
that's why we don't count it. So
Okay.
what were your results?
Couple of thousand.
Okay.
Um,
All
I
right.
I thought it was more than that.
Okay.
Maybe I need to look. Maybe I need to look for the past year. Uh,
Well, and you're not,
yeah,
if you
12
may,
months is
go
nearly
ahead.
10,000 in 12 months as
Okay.
donations.
Okay. And that's just donations. So if you're not recording people that are you're getting hired, and that's
Hmm.
sort of a gray
Hmm.
area. There is a report, we just sent it out actually in my chapter of how to track thank you for closed business. Because you're a nonprofit, that's going to sound a little bit different. And
Hmm.
I got to think about that. I'll add that. I have documents on the BNI Perfect 100 website that are free downloads, and I can add that download to how you track thank you for closed business. And I don't know because I haven't looked at it in for nonprofits in a minute, but we can refer to that document as to the best way because every nonprofit's doing different things. So
Hmm.
the dollar
Hmm.
value associated with thank you for closed business is going to be unique. All right, so let's. I wanted to talk about what you said earlier, which is referrals is your struggle. So how are you? Why do you find that to be a struggle? I guess we'll start there. And it's
Um,
not necessarily a struggle. You're at 10, you're in the red just on that one. You're at 75
hmm.
overall.
Hmm.
But if you
Hmm.
were to give and wanted to do more for others, which is
Hmm.
what it sounded like you wanted to do,
Yes, yes.
then let's talk a little bit, dig in there a little bit. Why do you think that's a challenge?
That is a very good question. And if I had an easy answer, I would have fixed it, right?
Right.
Um, and I know I work in my neighborhood and here at HopeWorks to be known as somebody who knows somebody who can do something. Um, and so, our landscape crew is my neighbor moved away and is trying to sell their house, and my B&I landscape guy is cutting their grass for them and maintaining their yard. So I'm looking for opportunities like that. They had somebody that they already knew who did their move, and boy, did they wish they had used our mover. I wish they'd used our mover because I ended up helping them load the U-Haul to get the rest of the stuff.
I know.
Um, um, and at HopeWorks, we do have a pretty large staff, and so I haven't done this in a while, but I need to get back on this horse. But I send out an occasional email reminding everybody that I'm in this networking group and on behalf of HopeWorks, and part of my responsibility is helping provide uh, business referrals. So if you're looking for somebody, and then I can feature one of our partners in the email that goes out to our staff, which is about 70. Um, and so those are some of the opportunities that I have. Um, but I'm not calling on people as a salesperson. I'm not
Right.
regularly calling on people,
Right.
and so I think it's not necessarily built into my uh, the
Day to
major
day.
part of my work,
Yeah.
right?
All right, so I'm going to roll us over to the Clifton strengths because I think there's maybe an answer in there, and we can talk a little bit more about it. Once we know, let's have the conversation about your strengths.
Okay.
Matt is the first one as a guest that has actually done his full 34, which he has shared. And I'm going to first start with his top five, just because that's what we've been doing with everyone. So, and your top five is really where you sort of play all day. They're the major things that you rely on that you don't think about, they just happen for you. So let's go through them. And we have some new ones that we haven't talked about here on the podcast. So I'm excited about that too. So your number one is strategic. You create alternative ways to proceed. Faced with any given scenario, you can quickly spot the relevant patterns and issues. Your number two is ideation. You're fascinated by ideas. You are able to find connections between seemingly disparate phenomena. Number three is input, which is new for the podcast. Input, you are inquisitive and have a craving to know more. You might collect and archive all kinds of information. You seek to know something about a lot of things, which you said earlier, right? Number four is learner. You have a great desire to learn and want to continuously improve. The process of learning rather than the outcome excites you. And number five is maximizer, which is also new to the podcast. You see talents and strengths in others, usually before anyone else does. Strengths fascinate you. You love to get others excited about their potential, and you seek to transform something strong into something superb. So let's roll over, Leslie, to the full report. Matt has given me his permission to show all of the information that, so if you're only doing your top five, which I started out, I've mentioned several times, the first two times I took this over the years, I only did the top five. And then in 2020, did the full 34 and hired a coach. And there's so much more meat on the bone here to deal with. So if you look at the left-hand side, and I know some of you are just listening and not able to see this, but if you go to YouTube and subscribe, um, you can see the full report. So, and I'll read the top 10. So we add in another layer here with number 6 is futuristic, 7 is intellection, 8 is woo, 9 is achiever, 10 is relator. So, and we've had, I think, all of those on the podcast before, people that had those strengths. But what's cool about knowing more, and really I like to look at also 11 and 12. 11, so that on the left-hand side of the report says strengthen, on the right-hand side says navigate. So 11 and 12 is self-assurance, and number 12 is positivity. As we start to roll down to the bottom, I think everyone's first inclination when they receive this information is to look at the top and then look at the bottom and say, "Oh gosh, I'm not those things." And Matt and I have very similar strengths, and we also have things that we don't use as often. So it's not a weakness, which is how a lot of people want to talk about this. But the whole point of Clifton Strengths is we want to point out where you operate most often, what your superpowers are, because it doesn't mean, your harmony is 33 and my harmony is 33. Doesn't mean that we don't want harmony, doesn't mean we can't create harmony. It just means that's not our go-to, right? Is we have a different level of things that we look at first. And when you look at your top 4, what color do you see on the screen, Matt?
Green.
Green. And that means
And I'm in the green. So
yes, you're all green. Okay. Yeah, I like that correlation. So green is strategic. So you lead almost all well, and you have 2 more in your top 10, right? So what's interesting about that is in when you do the full 34, you get a 25-page report. And I'm going to hold this up and people are not going to be able to see it, and that's okay. All you really need to see at a glance, what do you see on this page as I hold it up for you, Matt?
one side is all green and
And there's a smattering of other
spattering
things.
of orange and purple.
Right, yeah, so
I don't I don't think I have that sheet.
you do, because you sent it to me.
Did I?
It is page 21. Um,
Oh, okay.
so there's some
See, you
very
can't expect me to read all the way to the back.
I know, right? But now I'll hold up mine. What do you see here?
uh, you have green, but you have a lot of orange and purple.
Right. Yeah. So I have in this is, and so what this does is kind of highlight your main themes.
Okay.
So Matt's at the top says strategic and mine says influencing, but I also
Okay.
have my number 1 is strategic. I also have maximizer in my top 5, so we share those 2 things.
Mhm.
So I want to be, and I also have ideation, but ideation's number 8 for me. So, we kind of, there's a bunch of them that are overlapping, but you have far more on the strategic side of things. So what that often means is you're the mental guy. You're the one that, you're wrapping thinking around all the things that are happening for whatever it is you're doing, whether that's BNI, what you're doing at HopeWorks, whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it, you're in your head kind of strategizing things, right? And strategic is a strong piece of that. So and ideation means you come up with lots of ideas. Now you have both input and learner, which means you not only get information, you get enjoyment out of looking for information, but learner also likes to go deeper. So it's kind of like the catalog for old people. When you used to go to the library, you would pull out the drawer with the catalog of things, before we had Google, that you would pull the drawer open and there would be, the card catalog of things. But then you would go and find the thing in the shelf. You would go find the book you were looking for and dive in deeper. So you've got both of those things. And then maximizer, for me, how it plays out is I enjoy finding it's kind of it's both a blessing and a curse. It is a finding of things. You love to take good things and make them great. How that plays for me is I'm a coach. I like to work with people where I see their potential and then build that to make it stronger. Or I like to look at a chapter and see its potential and make them stronger. Or I like to look at a business, same thing. Like I have a new client who he told me he's number 8 out of 20,000 offices. He's hiring me to take them. They're already good. They're really good. 7 out of
Mhm.
20,000 is pretty good. Or 8, I can't remember which one, but either way, it's still really good. And he wants to make it better. So
Mhm.
that plays right to my strength. So how do all of these things, first of all, and I know you've done this report a while back, but I know you looked at it again in preparation for the podcast. So what were the things that surprised you the most when you got your report?
Well, looking at the top 5, no surprise there. I'm an information junkie. I'm a researcher. Um, I I in some of my doctoral work and talking about leadership and things like that, there was some talk about how what do you consider the greatest way to be considered, and when I working through that material, sage was what I came up with. So I like being able to have wisdom that I can share with other people. Um, I was surprised that discipline is number 30
Okay.
because I'm a very disciplined person. I get things done. Um, so that surprised me. And harmony, being down at 33, it reminds me that there are things that are key parts of who we are, and then there are skills that we learn in the
Right.
other places.
Right.
So, having spent 30 years in church ministry, harmony is kind of important, and being able to bring harmony. Um, I think looking at woo uh, and let's see, woo and harmony. Um, my early years inclination was very very little patience for people who are not. Um, I've explained it to you once.
Right. What don't you get about this?
That's right. No, that's not what we want to do. This is what we ought to do. Um, but but so I have learned. When you're in the seminary world, which is I was director of admissions at a seminary. Everybody, all of the students are taking classes, and then they're evaluating everybody. That's not the right word. Pigeonholing? No, I don't know. Um, but one of our students, we were talking about the disc, and he said, "Oh, you're high I," which is true. I tend to lead by part of that is inspiration, which is I think both maximizer and woo. Um, but I think I'm woo in large group settings, but I'm not great at woo in one-to-one settings. So that word, that concept, um,
So woo, for those that maybe are just hearing that for the first time, is winning others over. It's not woo, 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 like,
woo woo.
yeah. We use that term in a different way sort of in modern society, that if you're woo woo, that means something different. Woo is an influencing theme, and maximizer is an influencing theme. And then you also have number 11, self assurance, which is an influencing theme. So you have, so to kind of talk to that harmony being 33 for us both, doesn't mean again that you can't create harmony. It doesn't, you probably create harmony in other ways. Because your woo is so high, you're at number 8, and on any given day, your top 10 might rearrange. Or at any given time in throughout, if you do this periodically. The first time I took it, ideation was my number 1, and ideation's number 8 for me now. So, depending on how you're applying your strengths can often influence, the time of your life, your experiences. They will, kind of rearrange. And some of them are so close in the report that your 5 and your number 6 could be almost interchangeable, but if you only do your top 5, you don't know what number 6 is. So at the point that you take it, so that having more information for me is always better. And you're probably achieving those things. You also have high relator. Relator is one to one. You like to go deeper one to one with people. So you're probably getting to know someone more and then creating that harmony in that way, and because you have high maximizer, you're figuring out the strategy to, if I need to create harmony, doesn't mean I need to be the person, the harmony person is a different person. They're talking to lots of people, making sure everyone's needs are met, making sure everybody's happy. That isn't, I don't have that time, right? Because
Mhm.
I can't see as a strategic for number 1, I can't make those changes by focusing on the one to one to one. I have to look farther down the road. So now that we've said all of that, I want to go back to your referral conundrum. So, utilizing the strengths that you have, can you see a way? So, strategic ideation, maximizer in your top five. Can you see a way that you might be able to find more referrals?
I am very good at when I'm talking to somebody. I'm big picture. I'm very good at seeing I need to introduce this person to this person. Um, so I do that a lot. How do I need to make that work into
Into
referral
BNI?
referrals?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's 500 and I think as of this morning, the report was 508 people in our general area where you focus that are in
Hmm.
BNI. So do all of them, are they all in your network?
Um, Technically, yes. Realistically, no.
Right, right. So how could you strategically figure out who might be, because I hear all the time as I'm in my own chapter in traveling and other chapters that we need to hire such and
Hmm.
such. I hear it all the time, even though technically we're not supposed to say that, right?
Hmm.
In
Hmm.
BNI. And for those of you that don't know, if you have someone that is an MLM, multi-level marketing person in your chapter, that is in the rules that they not recruit for their MLM because that creates a conflict. But we do have other people. I can think of insurance people, financial people, that they're always looking to build their team. So they will periodically say, I'm looking, or even the trades, like they're trying to grow, right? We want to keep people in BNI. And one of the biggest struggle for trades is we grow them out of their business. We grow them out of BNI because we give them so much work and they're the person doing it that they can't stay. So they want to hire somebody. So there's an opportunity. You need to place people, they need to hire people. So what strategy might you employ, do you think?
Uh, I need to I need to visit chapters. I need to post on Facebook. I hate
I heard that. I don't know if everybody did. Matt said he hates Facebook. I do not hate Facebook because Facebook is an amazing place to mine for all the things you need.
Facebook. Hmm. Um, there are reasons that my Facebook is not a place of joy and happiness.
Yeah, and I hear
Um,
that. Yes, a lot of
uh,
people have that. Yes.
yes. Anyway,
Yeah.
I know we have our
Overlooking the obvious,
yeah,
all the reasons why it's not a good thing. But
yeah,
if we focus on the thing that is good for us, which is getting the word out, right? It's
yes,
amazing for that. And sometimes the
yes.
words are not what we want to hear, but you have positivity is number 12, so you can spread more positivity
I
that.
can.
Staying ahead in a world driven by technology is key. At Wisdom Integrators, we don't just solve problems, we create opportunities. Wisdom Integrators, connecting your world, solving your problems.
So we do have a local, and not all the regions necessarily are going to have this, but you can certainly work with your region person, whether that's the franchise owner or your area director. We have a local Facebook group, and that is where all the members, in theory, belong as a private group. So you could be talking about your availability to place people in that group, right? Because that's a service to others and it's a nonprofit. So I think that's something that not everybody knows. And there's a win-win if you have people and they need people. So, that's a easy way to utilize Facebook and
Hmm.
that's when I look at Facebook, there's a lot of downsides, but there's also a lot of upsides in primarily they're in groups for me is having private groups of people that are whatever you're into. I belong to a baking group. I belong to photography groups. I belong to this, that, and the other, that are my interests, but there are also ways to connect with people. I have mentored and coached people worldwide by being in a private Facebook group. And that's how I would never prior to Facebook been able to reach those people and support them, which is what I love to do. So
Hmm.
I find focusing in those areas that are good, are helpful. So and we can talk more offline about how to reach all the people, but I think you've got some great opportunities, and I would encourage you to, thinking about your strengths, apply some of that mental energy towards looking at how you could maximize your opportunities within, not maximize your strength,
Mhm.
but that could be applicable also to how do I reach these other 500 or and so people to find what I do, because I think you're unique in that most of our nonprofits need and are seeking the money. You're not, that's not your main goal. It would be useful and helpful to have that, but it isn't your main thing. So I think that's a different channel that maybe is easier, because probably everybody knows someone. In fact, I'm trying to think. I'm in there's some local city groups where I will often see people posting they need work, and
Mhm.
maybe having a resource like you to help support them would be, and I hadn't thought of that till just now, might be a good opportunity to connect people who, need that support. So there's all of that. All right. So talk to me about, is there a time that you can think about where your strengths were, you had a tough challenge and your strengths really helped you overcome that?
So being strategic and a learner, those have been important to me in navigating changing work environments. I mentioned earlier that I had been in uh, higher education administration, director of admissions, and responsible for recruiting students. And during the time that I was responsible for recruiting students, my institution went from offering some online classes in a field where hardly anybody offered online classes to falling behind a little bit because other institutions started offering more online classes, to the pandemic when everybody was offering online classes.
Right.
Um, and so going through uh, that whole range of recruiting opportunities, as an institution, our best recruiting has always been face to face. So traveling to conferences, traveling to undergraduate schools, campuses, recruiting students face to face had always been our biggest success. And so during that time, learning, okay, what technology are we using? Believe it or not, I used to teach college students how to use Zoom.
Okay.
So we were using Zoom well before the pandemic, and so I used to teach people how to use Zoom. And so moving through there, working through that situation. Uh, when we went to completely online for our institution, because we always already used Zoom for our distance students, we just had to say, okay, for our local students, I'm sorry, you're in your on-campus housing, but you've got to attend on Zoom as well. Um, but our parent institution, it was all new to them. They were trying to find their feet on Zoom, and so I was also able to help some of my colleagues on the other campus with that. So um, the fact that I love new things, I love learning, and I love maximizing. I was able to teach people not just how to use Zoom, but how to get a lot out of it. Um, and so my strengths really played well in those circumstances. Um,
When you
yeah,
mentioned students there, and I want to bring that up, and when we talked before, you said that you and your students both were taking the assessment and kind of walking
mhm.
through those kinds of things. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. This was long ago. I was a campus minister, so I was working with college students at Kansas State University, and you won't be surprised knowing my strengths. I love campus ministry. Um, we're answering questions, we're digging deep, we're
Right.
learning, we're
Yes.
growing together. But a hallmark of my ministry was always recruiting and mentoring student leaders, so that I would be the coach for our student leadership who would lead the ministry. And I always had a list of, this is what I do and how much of this can I give away to somebody else. And so there were things that I needed to do. Sometimes there was teaching that they needed to hear from me. but I would also help my student leaders teach. And so I one year in our fall uh, student leadership retreat, we did the strengths finders together, and so uh, I worked with our student leaders to help them understand who they are and what they bring to the table. And it was really interesting for us as a group to look at what are we missing as a group, um, and who do we know that's good at this that we can bring in to add their strengths. So it was very helpful for the students and for the ministry.
Yeah, and and you bring up a couple of points there, I guess. The thing about, I wish that someone had pointed me, and back then they called it StrengthsFinder. I wish that somebody had pointed me to that earlier than, the first time I found it, I was already kind of established. But at the young adult age, what better time to understand what your strengths are? And they may change somewhat over time, but if you can go into the workforce, if you're coming out of college and going into the workforce, or you're somewhere in the middle of college looking to, what am I going to do with my life? I know my stepson is 20, he's almost 27. Those questions come up a lot, right?
Hmm.
What am
Hmm.
I going to do and what makes sense for me? And if only someone had pointed out to me, this is the set of things that are your superpowers. What difference would that have made earlier on? I found those things, and my first career in corporate, you mentioned desk. I've done desk in Myers-Briggs several times, and that information is good. Strengths, Clifton Strengths is you. And I was prepping for the podcast, and your slide was up on my screen, and my husband happened to walk by, and he looks at the screen and he goes, "That looks like a DNA strand." And then I said, "Exactly." It is a DNA strand, and it's meant to look like that because it is your unique DNA, right? And when you look at that, if you can hand somebody that information who works, that you're trying to help, or that you work with, and you mentioned building it, who don't we have, um, as a team, we want to understand if we have a gap. We don't necessarily hire or seek that, but it's good to know the makeup of the group that you're working with, so that you can understand there may be a different way to look at it that you're not looking at whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? So that's
Hmm.
where the coach piece comes in, is understanding, it's good to know the information. How you apply it is a whole nother level. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, and this was, what do we say, 2006? Um, I think everything that I had heard up until then was about how to improve your weaknesses. And
Right.
so when I read the Strengths Finders book, it just made sense that you're going to have more success building on your strengths. The same amount of work on your strengths will have a much better return
Yes.
than putting that work into your, as they would
Right.
say back then, weaknesses. We're going to
Right.
say your bottom 10.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
and I actually in church consulting, there's a well known tool that has the opposite approach, where you identify, um, not to go too far in depth on this, but they say churches that are good at all of these things tend to be growing. So which one of these things you're not good at, let's elevate that, because we know that if you're everybody's up here, you're growing. So then you go in and work with a church and you say, okay, let's do this assessment. These are the areas that you identified as our weaknesses. Why do you not like this?
Right.
And so there are people, it wasn't necessarily that they didn't like it, but now with this process, you're kind of asking people to nitpick. And it was, I have had a very negative experience approaching let's focus in on our weaknesses.
Right.
So focusing in on our strengths, of course, positivity, number 12. So,
Yes. But it's actual research. So Gallup owns Clifton Strengths, and that's all they do is research. They do data analytics for companies essentially, and their analytics show that if we focus on what's right about people, which is the whole reason Don Clifton came up with the initial concept, is he wanted to look at what was good about people, is that exponential growth is significantly better when you focus on what you're already good at versus what you're not great at. That there's
Mhm.
marginal growth in the things you don't do well, but if you and which is always, I came up, I've been in the business world for a long time, and I came
Mhm.
up in during times where we always looked at what you're bad at.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that isn't motivational when you're told you've got to go spend more time doing that thing that you're not great at, because you're only going to make tiny gains, and
Mhm.
they're not enjoyable because they're not your superpower, but somebody else would revel in that, right? In that thing. Wouldn't it make more sense to focus me on what I am already doing well and give me more of it, and let me take, the gains? And it's true, the Gallup, the percentages are significant, and it also reduces turnover and increases well-being, because and that today, the millennials today have impacted how work gets done, because they're not going to put up with the things we used to.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Rightly so. It's a good thing that they're focusing on. I want my work to matter, and I want my work to be something I enjoy. So, and I only want to work certain hours that, I'm going to have a balance in what I want to do in my own time to make a difference in other places. So, that's all good stuff. So just
Awesome.
recap the students, so students are a great way to, it can even be high school seniors, maybe,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
can go as low as age 9. But I think for me, I would prefer to hit that as a college, if they're in college, or post high school kind of situation. So you can get a kickstart into how, if you're interviewing, these are my things, this is what I offer you and I'm really good at, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you also mentioned the church, and that's also, we have coaches that specialize in working with churches, because it's sort of, and BNI is another place. The BNI chapter is a microcosm of any of those situations. Is within that chapter, there's a variety of different makeups of people, and we don't have to look at what we're not good at. I mean, we do have to know it, but we can work through. If we knew what everybody in the chapter strengths were, we would have a much easier time applying those things to the people, giving people things they enjoy doing. um,
Yes.
and you're, I know in your chapter, you're the education coordinator and you're a visitor host, right?
Mhm. Mhm. I'm not education this year. That was
Okay,
last
you
year.
were last year. Okay, all right. So, and I'm imagining that was enjoyable to you based
Yes.
on.
I was really surprised that it was enjoyable, because I thought, I'm not a business person like everybody else is, but the principles that I was teaching, and of course, being a preacher, I'm very comfortable standing in front of people and being an inspiring leader.
Yes, well, and part of input and learn, well, more so input, is you want to, and you said this earlier, I know a little bit about a lot of things, and that's part of that input, is because you've done research across, but learner and then maximizer, you do want to be in front of people, and you do want to share that information because it's going to help other people. You have a vast array of accumulated knowledge that you want to utilize in giving it to others. You need people to give, this information to, or else it's not helpful to you, right?
Yes.
It's fun for you to do the deep dive into things and learn more, but not giving it to anybody is less fun,
Yes.
probably, right?
Yes. And with ideation and strategic thinking, seeing connections and being able to help people make those connections.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that speaks to, you have connectedness as number 13. And you said
Mhm.
earlier, you like to be the person who connects people. And you have
Mhm.
13 is pretty, pretty up there
Mhm.
in terms of connecting people to one another. You just look at and I think that people forget to do this. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, is we apply these things to what we do for work, whether it's our own business or you work for someone else. We look at all these things and think, this is what I can add value to where I am, but we forget to do it for ourselves within BNI, or in
Mhm.
BNI as a chapter. We forget to do those things. We don't look at holistically that the chapter is a microcosm. It is a business. It is a,
Yes.
it's we are the employees, so to speak, of the chapter, and there are leaders and there is HR, which is membership committee. We act like a business, sort of.
Hmm.
We have
Hmm.
all of the structure and all of the processes, but not everybody treats it that way. So
Yes.
the results vary because we don't apply top to bottom all the strengths of the people within
Hmm.
it. And that's when people go to visit different chapters, everybody always comments on how they see it looks different, right? It's a different,
Hmm.
it's all the same seats, so to speak, and all the same processes in theory, but it is a very different, even if you had two highly functioning chapters, it would be two different experiences because of the people that are in it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's very
Uh,
cool to see that. Go ahead.
yes.
All right. So imagine you were talking to somebody who had never discovered their strengths. What would you say to inspire them to want to unlock their true potential, their superpowers?
Um, I think this is really important because you are finding when you discover your strengths, you're giving yourself permission to do that, to work in this area. And when you see the areas that we're navigating down toward the bottom, you also see, okay, I can do this, but I need tools here. And so by learning your strengths, it really does empower you to be the person. Sorry, I'm a Christian. The person God made you to be.
You don't have to be
Um,
sorry.
and so I think that's crucial to being comfortable in your own skin, comfortable in who you are, and as a leader, as a business person, um, if I'm trying to force my business if I'm around whole square peg, if I'm trying to force my business to look like something that's not me, I need permission to say either I need to do this differently, or maybe I'm not in the right place.
Right.
But by having permission to say I'm not great at everything, let me find tools, let me find help, let me find people. Yeah, I think that's pretty
That's
much
it.
it, is
Okay.
learning to build on your strengths, and then recruiting tools to work on the other thing. I,
Yeah.
I am a believer.
Okay. Well, and I think that it's also because you said give yourself permission, which I love, to work in what you're good at. I think there's the other side of that is not being apologetic for being who you are. Um, because if you look at, because again, we share some things, I think Maximizer sometimes the blind spot can be nothing is ever good enough,
Hmm.
because we can always improve on the thing, whatever it is, whatever the challenge. Maximizer's natural skill set is to take good things and make them great. What is great? What is great? Because no matter how good we are, we can always make it. For a maximizer, it can always be
Hmm.
better, and that is a strength. And but if we're not sharing it with others, that this is me, right? I am gonna always be looking for the next level. Even when I feel like, my chapter, I'll give us a little brag. We're at 85 in as a whole, as a chapter. We're the highest in all of the region. And that is a strong suit because we can recruit people with that. When we say people, we've added 9 people in the last 6 months, and we're talking about because we're good, and people are seeing the good, so to speak, when they come and visit. But where does the good end? For me, it doesn't, right? Is we can
Hmm.
always
Hmm.
take it. We're at 85. That means we can go to 90.
Yes. Yes.
We're at the top of the charts and we're going to get higher. You know what I mean? But that's me.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
being able to communicate to the people that you're with, whether it's at BNI or at work
Hmm.
or the team that you're
Hmm.
working with, whatever it is, it's almost a perfection, right? Is we seek
Hmm.
that perfection that may never happen.
Hmm.
And we need to
Hmm.
give ourselves permission to say it's good enough. It's good enough here, right? This is Tammy, it's good enough. Matt, it's good enough, but
Yes.
also people seek that out. They want that, but like the client I mentioned, they're at 7 or 8 out of 20,000 and they want to be higher.
They want to be.
Yeah.
5 and then 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I love that, right? That excites me because that's my strength. That's my superpower is taking that and making it, getting you there, helping you see the light to get to that next step. So, the working with somebody like a coach like me, that's where we look at those things and say, okay, upside downside, it's how you, sorry, I got a little froggy. It's how you communicate that to others, how you work with other people is this is how I am. I can't change, but I can communicate to you why I am asking these things or doing these things or want to give you this information because that's what my strengths are. All right, so cool. So,
Can I throw one more thing on top of that?
absolutely. Yes.
Um, recognizing I talked about being okay, having permission to be comfortable with who I am, but also recognizing that this is how I'm built. It's not how everybody else is built. Those people aren't fools.
Right. Yes.
They're not lazy.
Right.
They're not my problem. As a leader, I need to be able to communicate with people where they are and how they think, and in a way that's going to empower them to be who they are, and give them permission to be who they are, so that together we can help our organization be what it needs to be.
Yes, and some of the other assessments give you kind of the bigger view of that is, I'm a ENTJ, so, I'm the
ENTP.
okay. So they call that the field marshal, which
Yeah.
sounds, again,
Hmm.
how these perception is, that sounds bad to me, but I am that. I am helping people charge the hill and helping them get over it, right? So that's a good thing if I know that, but how I uniquely do that is me. And that's why I love CliftonStrengths is my individual set of, if we're similar, but you have different things than I do, there's strengths in there
Hmm.
that need to be,
Yes.
considered. And when I tell you, if I need information on something we're going to work on together, you're going to love going and digging deep into that. I am not.
Hmm.
It just depends, my
Yes.
it
Yes.
depends on what it is. My input is 19 and let's see, learner, where's my learner? My learner's 18. So, those are in the middle of the pack for me. They're not my
Just give it to me.
right. And if we work together, you would be like, yes, and then I
Hmm.
can talk to you about the praise I would give you for if we were working on a project together would be this, you would revel in the fact that I would love what you found for me
Hmm.
and we would work together well because we have high strategic themes to create based on what you've found that
Hmm.
information and I have different set of things that would help us get there. So,
Hmm.
so that's the fun of this. All right. So we've talked a lot today. I am going to ask you one last question, then we'll call
Okay.
it for the day. So what's next for you? What are you excited about? What are you hoping to make an impact in personally, professionally? What's up?
So I'm at a point in my life where I'm comfortable with who I am. Um, if I wasn't, it's too late to do anything about it, right?
Well, I'll disagree
to,
with
to
you there,
within,
but
yeah,
okay.
to a degree.
Yeah.
But I'm comfortable with who I am. I have experience. I have passions. I have self awareness, and I feel like my all of these things. I'm at a point in my life where I am able to mentor and coach and encourage other people coming along, and so um, I'm not excited to be getting older, but I am excited about the opportunities that's giving me in the lives of other people, to be able to be that mentor, that coach, that encourager. Not necessarily coach in the way that you're a coach, but just walking alongside people and helping them uh, maximize who God made them to be.
Right. Yeah, you have lots to give based on all the, all the things we talked about, right? It was each in our own way. We give back, and
Yes,
that's the cool thing about us all being unique individuals that walk the earth. So, all right, well,
yes.
thank you so much, Matt. Appreciated having you here today on the Perfect 100. And I'm going to remind you one more time, if you're listening, please go and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the Perfect 100. Thanks for listening to The Perfect 100. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to show up differently in your chapter, share it with your team and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you're curious about your own Clifton strengths and how to bring out the best in yourself or your chapter or your business, head to TammyZurak.com to learn more about building your superpowers into everything you do. Keep showing up, keep connecting, and keep building your perfect 100.